Welcome to the State of Wrestling. This is Doc. On today's episode, I'm going to be joined by American Numbers and one JML to go over the Wrestling News Observer Hall of Fame 2025 candidates. In this particular episode, we are focusing on the historical ballots. We go over the merits of each candidate and do a consensus on whether they get into the Hall of Fame or not. This is the most in depth coverage of the awards you will get. This will also be the first ever time we do a second screen experience, as during this episode, we use American Numbers spreadsheet to help guide us and take us through the ballots. And you can follow along with us on YouTube or even using Numbers spreadsheet, which are both linked below. If you have ever wanted to get into the mind of a voter or ever wanted to be in that position, this is probably the show for you. JML has ran the Wrestling Observer newsletter Hall of Fame tracker account on Twitter and Blue Sky for years with his friend, partner, Detlef. They do an excellent job on curation. Please follow them. And please, welcome to the show. Enjoy. What's up? This is Doc, aka the Gunatic Fringe, aka Big Match John Sinigang, aka the legend, the Bigan Killer Randy Otap, aka 5 stars Dave Seltzer, aka your host. And we are doing something special today, ladies and gentlemen, because joining me on this very special episode also is my partner. This is going to be a special State of Wrestling Hall of Fame edition. So you know who I have on State of Wrestling. It's always going to be Tio Turo. We got American Numbers here.
Hey.
And of course, since we're covering the Hall of Fame, Wrestling Observer News Hall of Fame, we have someone, one half of the duo that runs the Wrestling News Observer Hall of Fame tracker account. You can find them on Blue Sky. You can find them on Twitter. You could find them, on your local Discord, or, because, the three of us are kind of talking a little bit earlier, and we kind of revealed we're all kind of old DVD-R heads. So let me introduce to the stage, making his debut here on the prescription, making his debut here on State of Wrestling, we have with us the illustrious, the magnificent, the man from a seasonal residence. We got here JML. Welcome to the building.
Oh, thank you guys. It's been a pleasure to join the program.
Yeah.
And now, for our Spanish-speaking audience, bienvenidos al podcast con Doc, American Numbers y JML de las partes oscuras del Internet. Y ahora vamos a discutir el Salón de la Fama del Wrestling Observer.
Yes, and today we are discussing the Wrestling News Observer Hall of Fame Class 2025 ballot selections. And, I'm going to let these two guys kind of like go into what does this mean? What does the Wrestling Observer News Hall of Fame mean within, whether it be within this business, within the fan base, within, all the pundits. And I know what you do on your social media, JML, is people kind of send you their ballots before they get sent in, right? Or is that something like, I don't know?
Well, with the ballots, a lot of the voters they will do it at either send me their ballot like directly before they send in the ballot, or they send it in at the same time, send it right after they send it to Dave. They'll cast their ballot, they'll send their ballot back in via email, or I mean, he's still accepting mail through the post office for the Hall of Fame
Yes.
vote, but um, yeah, like they'll cast their vote and they'll send it to our account, and we count it up for the public tracker. Because basically the public tracker, it's inspiration from the Baseball Hall of Fame public tracker, but like Brian Thibodeau and those guys, they do a phenomenal job tracking the ballots for the Baseball Writers Association, for their Hall of Fame. The thing about it is with us is that because the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame, it um, it resembles the Baseball Hall of Fame only to a point, because with the voter base, a lot of it is retired wrestlers or active people that work inside of wrestling. So their vote is going to be guarded, and the most I'll ever get is an anonymous ballot from someone in the business. I'll probably never get someone who's active in the business with the public vote. It just won't happen. So a lot of those votes, you'll probably see when coming in. I mean, the most we've gotten. I mean, last year we got 71 votes, and that's a lot compared to when we started. But
Yeah.
compared to the voter fan base, the voter not fan base, but the voter base, I would say it's 440 of counting last year. We won't get that close to um, of the of the votes, so we could model it and project who would come in as an inductee. Not like those guys over the Baseball Hall of Fame. We can't do that. Um, Most would probably get, I'm hoping, is half that. But for us to get a quarter, just to project that is phenomenal, just because of the secretive nature that is professional wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to give a little more inside baseball background, it's as JML was saying, like the vote is based on, they've set it up based on kind of the Baseball Hall of Fame, and it's meant to be a way for people in the industry, plus like writers or people who are around the business, or people who have some knowledge as determined by Dave, to kind of vote on people who should get in and should be represented in the Hall of Fame. Now, we'll talk about the rules a little bit later, but essentially it's kind of like baseball in the sense that, there's a group population, as JML mentioned, there's people in the business who are like not going to share or reveal their ballots, and there's people who are writers who do, kind of like same thing with baseball. They'll have a discussion, they'll publish their ballot, they'll talk about it, and essentially you have to get 60%. Yeah, you have to get 60% to get in, 60% of the vote in your region to get in. It is divided by kind of region, or kind of the way to think about it, if you think about baseball, like by leagues. So like there's like historical U.S. Canada, modern U.S. modern U.S. Canada, Mexico, Japan, and what am I forgetting? Oh, rest of the world. And forget rest of the world because everybody else seems to. And then like non-wrestlers who are like generally considered like their own thing and own separate thing. And as I mentioned, you have, once you get on the ballot, you have 15 chances or 15 years to get to, unless you're Adam Copeland, you have 15 chances to get to 60%. And if you fail to get to 60%, or you get less than 10%, you get voted off the ballot. You can be brought back within that 15 years and have another shot, but you generally go up or down, and then like you have to get to 60. If you hit your 15th year, you get one last shot, right? They say, hey, 15th year, you have a last shot. We'll talk. There's a guy on the ballot who's like that, who has a shot to get to 50. If he gets to 50, he can stay. But then he eventually, like next year, he gets like one more shot to like get to 60, and then he gets voted off, unless he gets brought back in another region. So if you were in modern, you can't get moved to historical. So it's kind of like going to the Veterans Committee in baseball. and you can kind of come in with that. And that's kind of like ballpark what it is. And like again, there's like a lot of little things like categories have changed over time. They will put people who are like he had an initial class he put in, who he determined are people who just needed to be like guys who just didn't need to go to a vote, or guys who are kind of historical candidates, where
Mm.
like the probability people are going to vote for them is going to be kind of like minimal. And you can like people can talk to Dave and like suggest people to that. I forget I forget not Billy Ross. Like I have like one of the candidates, which was like the one of the guys from historical from like the Brits who set up I've suggested that guy as I forget his name right now, and it's Bill something. It's one of the Bills, and there's candidates like that. Like I'm thinking of Martin Carabazan was a guy like that, who I believe Martin was a big Argentinian wrestling guy. He was like this big show, and Dave basically just automatically inducted him because he figured that people wouldn't vote in, but he deserved to be in. And that's kind of the gist of it. Like we'll get into the details in each region because, like if you have a ballot, Dave's picked you and said you have a ballot, and you get to vote in any region you believe you have the knowledge, and then you get a certain number of votes in each region. Now you don't have to vote. You can be like baseball writers who like don't necessarily vote in a region, because if you leave a ballot blank, say if there's 6 votes in a region and I vote for 3, but essentially I'm kind of like hurting everybody else by not voting, but you do that because you want your candidates to get in, or you don't think anybody else is deserving, which can't happen certainly. And that's kind of like the ballpark. Is there? I mean, we'll go through that in a little more detail, but am I missing anything in particular here?
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
And as JML was saying, they do the tracker. If people like watch me, I will. And I was working on it beforehand. I do what he's suggesting, which is I try to model out from the public to get like an idea. There's some interesting things. The ballot is, from what I've seen on the tracker, they've been doing it for 4 years. Generally, it's a good idea of the ranking of people going in. Typically, they under predict, so they will predict less than the people who are actually going in. I actually have I actually have the numbers for you guys. So like I have a fun little one which is called like jumps and falls. Typically, so like you've predicted average 4.5 and 6.5 have gone in. Typically, of the 4.5, about 2 fall off and then 4 jump on. So typically, if people are close in the public, they're going to be close on the actual ballot, right? But as he said, like the population that's voting on the public is more pundits, whereas like the people who are voting on the private ballots are going to be more like people who are in the industry, wrestlers, promoters, media people who are like not necessarily going to vote the same. They have a different opinion of things. Like so, you'll have things like they'll have different opinions on things like Randy Orton, or like the Young Bucks, or like CM Punk, right? Because it's one thing to view a guy, it's another thing to know him and work with him, and I think that kind of affects people. And I think there's a very specific bias which happens in all polling in terms of that. And we'll talk about it as we go through it, and we'll talk about the different candidates, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so as mentioned, before we go, is there anything we want to lay out? Oh, I wanted to talk about the categories. So the way you're supposed to judge people for the hall, right? So there's 2 categories, right? And those categories are it's drawing. So drawing means like whether or not you successfully do business through houses, through ratings, sold merch. You put assets in seats, baby. That's basically what that means. And you can be like essentially like somebody like Hulk Hogan would be a 9 in this category. Somebody like I mentioned like somebody like Bray Wyatt might be a -1, right? Because like maybe he hurt the business when he was it something when we put him on top that didn't do well and it killed something. And yeah, you gotta like judge that. Then there's work rate, which is 1 to 9. Again, like my way of interpreting that is like if a work rate guy can be like, is he like a legend, like a guy who's the best in the world, or maybe he was a bad worker, right? And that you kind of weigh that. And we're gonna talk about some candidates here that like are really bad workers, but like are really good in other stuffs. And then there's historical significance, which I think is the one that kind of screws people up. But a good way to think about it is imagine this person, and if you take him out of the equation and replace them with, in basketball, we call it what is it, the replacement level player, right? Basketball or baseball,
Yeah.
I'd be like, if you just grab somebody from the waiver wire and put them in, what would be the effect on the business if you took, or the Fed, or where he was, or the territory? If you take that person out, is it better or worse, right? What does that, how does that affect business? Is it a better place or a worse place if you take that person out? And obviously, it's a thought exercise and a what if, but you can kind of start imagining, did this person have unique skill sets or unique kind of abilities that like are really hard to replace, or is this something where I can just take this person out, put somebody in, and it really won't make that much of a difference, right? There's a gambit of candidates on this. And I think historical significance too is it someone that, like, if you watch them, right, or you see their matches, you see what they did influencing people down the line. People imitate their style. People kind of, they train to work like him, or it was like, or somebody who trained a bunch of people. That's like, those are the things that kind of like matter in that particular category. Did I miss anything on that?
I think you're pretty clear on that.
No. Yeah.
Okay, so what we agreed to do beforehand. So like, what we're gonna do, guys, if people were listening to, so we're gonna go through the categories. I'll give a brief, and then we can kind of go through. We're following a list I set up. I have a little guide that I set, and Doc will mention it. We'll link it, and it has every candidate in every region. It has kind of references for everyone, like a little case guide. If somebody's written up like, oh, here's why X person should be in the Hall of Fame, or here's why this person should never be in the Hall of Fame, and it's a big enough story, I'll try to share it, or like numbers, or there's a video when sometimes when these guys pass away, it'll be video on somebody like doing a eulogy and going over the person's career, or like, and I'll try to put some sort of match, some sort of case defense, some sort of video talking about a particular person, right? So, because I think like people have done the research, and I want to make sure that people kind of like can see it. My general take on this too is like, when I go look for research to put together, and if I can't find anything on you, then that kind of makes me doubt your career, like your bona fides, right? But like, if like, I'll make an example. Like, so if I was looking for a particular candidate in Mexico, and I get 5 podcasts of people going like, oh, this person was the greatest, or this team was the greatest, and here's all the things that they did, well, that makes me think that they're like, yeah, we really should be talking about this person, right? It's a bit much fuzzy, but I think it kind of like, it makes sense. I mean, like, am I wrong in thinking that, like, the more I see people writing about someone, the more I think that maybe we should be talking about their case? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, because I believe no matter who they've put on the ballot, there's a reason they got onto the ballot in the first place. And like, we're not coming here to bury guys and bury their careers. We're just talking people that we see, whether they belong in this Hall of Fame or if they don't belong. But it doesn't mean that their career was a wash. It's just that there's criteria for these Hall of Fames, and that's where this discussion is leading. And I do want to say, for folks joining us on YouTube, and if you're listening to this on the podcast, I would say I'm going to link the YouTube, because we're actually going through Arturo's spreadsheet, and he's going to be giving us a visual as we go through these lists. So, go to the YouTube.
And Doc will put it on the bottom, so that if you, as I said, I have a lot of videos on this. So if you're interested in someone in particular, you want to see a match, you want to listen to like Latin Lover go off in Spanish and talk about some candidates from Mexico, go ahead. I'm like, there's some great Mascarita Sagrada stuff. We'll get into that. There's a bunch of really interesting stuff that you can find, and you can like, it can make yourself like more interested and more like, I'll talk about some guys that I've discovered doing this exercise where I'm like, I didn't think I would ever like, but I'm like, oh god, this guy is so good. We'll get into that. And I think one thing, going to expand a little bit further on this, and there was a long conversation about a candidate who we'll talk about later. I'm not going to get into it now. But specifically, we wanted to put an end date on his candidacy, right? And there was a broad discussion. And I was like, oh no, this whole technical thing. And we were like, I said, look, here's the finality of it. Like, nobody's talking about this person right now, right? In there for forever, and nobody's talking about his candidacy, and it's like, what, we're going to leave him on for the next 15 years? Or are we going to say, look, let's end this particular chapter of his candidacy, give him that one final chance that Dave gives the person who's like reaching the end. And people will talk about it. People will write a case for or against. We'll have a conversation. We'll have a forum on whether he deserves to be in, and maybe he gets 50% of the vote, maybe he doesn't. But it puts a final point on it, right? After a certain amount of time. And again, like the whole point to me of the ballot is to drive conversation and research and have people kind of like look into these things. If nothing is being driven, there's no point to you being on the ballot. Is that me being kind of, but I mean, I'm being kind of like, but I think like, look, if you're not generating interest in your candidacy, then I mean, it's fine if you fall off, right? Let somebody else be on the
Yeah.
ballot.
Yeah, sometimes wrestlers fail to really campaign for themselves because this is also, this is a campaigning thing if you really do want to get into it. Some wrestlers kind of value this thing. Some wrestlers really just kind of look at Cauliflower Alley as more of a,
Yeah,
more or
some wrestlers,
less something like that they'd rather be with. So like
and
it's
some wrestlers I
just
know are voting on this, like
yeah,
voting on this and campaigning behind the scenes too. So like it goes through. Okay, so candidates and regions, right? And I think logically we're going to start with historical, right? And that makes sense to everyone, if that makes sense to everyone. And again, we're talking about essentially this means historical U.S. and Canada, so not Mexico, not rest of the world, not Japan, just historical in the U.S. and Canada. So like
yeah,
in general, that means like they haven't wrestled in the past 30 years, right? So this is
It's
that
30
30
years
like
from
yeah,
their
we were
active
having
days.
and it's major. We were having a conversation around Bill Dundee around this, where like Bill Dundee is technically still working a major 30 years ago because he's working in Memphis, but it's like it's very borderline. Next year he needs to move to historical, right? But this is like me getting into the technical like inside baseball conversation with like people who are like putting together and stuff. But essentially like so historical we have only one new candidate in historical. So historical we get 6 votes, right? So 6 votes. Format is we'll go through. We'll start with the news. We'll start with people who got the most votes in previous years, and then we'll say whether we think they're a Hall of Famer or whether like they're borderline. They should be on the ballot. They should be on the ballot and whatnot. And, like
yeah.
whether they would have our vote. So the first person is Sweet Daddy Siki. He passed away. He is the first. He is the only new candidate in in historical. It's actually really interesting because he was a singer and like a minor celebrity, and he was also kind of like a wrestler, a good wrestler too. And again, he was a black wrestler in like an earlier era, and kind of like really popular in some of like the era. So like he is kind of a trailblazer and a pioneer. So he's a really
Yeah.
interesting figure. I don't know if he's a figure that I would vote for.
Yeah.
I think I like, and again, this is not against Sweet Daddy Siki. It's just I kind of feel like there's more important people to get the vote in this region. If I had a vote,
He trained Edge and Christian, right? Or am I
yes.
mixing him up with somebody else? Yeah,
They-
that sounds
No,
familiar.
yeah. Yeah, there's no argument that he's an influential figure and he's got
Yeah.
like some historical significance. It's just like, again, what's gonna like, and people like this is gonna happen. Like we can like someone, but we can say like I don't know if he's necessarily he deserves to me. He like I would say like he deserves to be on the ballot. He deserves to be discussed.
Yeah.
I wouldn't vote for him yet. I'm like, here's the thing: I could get talked into voting for him if people kind of like write a convincing enough case. But right now, he's a no for me. Right? He's not a never. He's a not right now.
Yeah. I kind of compare him because he's in Canada, right? So like the other
Yeah.
guys who are the big trainers in Canada are him, Catfish Charlie, Scott Diamore. But then like in a historical context, like that's post career, and when we're talking about his historical
But you
influence,
have to you
it's
should. I mean, we'll talk about it later, but like you'll include booking bona
yeah,
fides for people too. So I would
yeah,
you have to count that. So I'm saying like he's definitely a guy who should be on the ballot and should be discussed.
definitely,
But I haven't seen like I don't have enough like he's not a historically great worker. He's not somebody who's a historically great draw. He's not he's significant, but he's not super significant. So he'd be like to me, he's like, if I'm rating him, he'd be like, yeah, he's like he's on the we were talking about this earlier. It's like he's like Sid Vicious to me. Like in the sense that like he would be a guy like I would be like, I'm fine having him on. I don't know that like you can talk me into voting for him ever.
yeah, yeah,
What do you think?
maybe,
What do you think, JML?
I have to do more research about Sweet Daddy Siki.
Yeah.
Just I know the historical significance of him, but that's more of a I have to do more research on him. So
I hope he stays on the ballot. Like this is the kind of thing is like I hope he stays on the ballot, but like so that we can have a broader conversation about him. But like I would not be that. So I mean, like I don't want to short shrift the guy, but like I mean, like I said, like we have the day. Let's move on to the next one. We're going to talk about a big one now. We're going to talk about the junkyard dog. Dog has actually last year was his highest vote total. He got a 54. I'm a big time. I've defended him. I've made the case for him. I've pointed out the case for him. There's a lot of really good cases for Jay Whitey. Jay Whitey is really controversial because he got buried in the newsletters a lot. But he is a figure that he was a gigantic draw in a time where like no one like him was, and he was drawing at a national level behind Hogan in the middle of like the he was drawing in the territories huge, and he was drawing in WWE. He was in the cartoon. He's like a big giant figure, and again also like a really important one. But like people kind of dig that he wasn't the best worker, and he was like a worse worker at the end of his career too. So controversial. I would. He to me is like I talked about Ben Wallace in the like before we got into this. Ben Wallace in the Basketball Hall of Fame. He's that kind of figure to me. Like I needed Ben Wallace to be in the Basketball Hall of Fame. I kind of feel like I need AYD in the Observer Hall of Fame. So he'd be a yes for me. He'd be like my first yes in historical.
When I think of Junkyard Dog, I'm a little bit. I don't know how old you guys are. I think I'm a little bit younger than you, but yeah, he was in the cartoon. My whole thing with him was I think his later years in WCW and that one appearance he did in ECW. But you go back, right? As we all do, we all go back. We got on DVD. We watched that ladder match he had with Jake the Snake Roberts in Stampede. And then once I got the network, I was able to see a couple of programs he did. One of the big programs that he did was the Ted DiBiase program for Mid South, and to speak your point, they had sold out the Superdome for that match, right?
Yeah, that thing was like hot, that thing was like the hottest program, arguably the hottest program in the country, at like a boom period. So yeah, no, like his drawing bona fides are absolutely rock solid for Dog.
Yeah, and like we're talking about historical significance. You talk to a lot of guys. I'm not sure. I think a lot of guys that are voting now were big fans or grew up in the '80s and were able to like kind of experience if they were like a little bit older, like in their maybe late 40s or 50s, they were able to see the Junkyard Dog programs in Mid South. But as we get a little bit younger, we're born to think we see him go into WWF. And as to speak your thing, he was the second big action figure. He was in the cartoon, and that's big. The cartoon was huge. I need people to know that the Hulk Hogan Rock and Wrestling cartoon was on CBS with Ninja Turtles, with Smurfs. It's kind of like Ghostbusters. It's kind of like on that level of like familiarity with that. I talked to a couple of guys who was their introduction to pro wrestling, and Junkyard Dog. Junkyard Dog at that time, I think he was doing the B towns, right? He was doing B towns on top.
Yeah, I believe he was doing that. So, God, this makes me gonna make you sound old, but like people not familiar with it, like the way WWE used to work is they would run A shows, which typically was headlined by the champ, and then B shows that was the Intercontinental or the number 2 babyface. So typically, Junkyard was doing
Snoop
the B towns, and then they were doing the C towns. In that era, they were doing I've done the research on this. So it was Hogan, and then Dog, and then the third one was like the tag champs and Wendy Richter. In that era, and then Richter was gone, and they were. I mean, like all of them were doing real. I mean, sometimes they were running D towns, which is like the really this is like a couple times, which is then you're getting into maybe the third baby face or something. That's only an occasional thing, but like that's kind of the way it works. So typically, if you were doing the B towns for WWE, you were a big freaking deal, right? Wendy would sometimes get those, but like typically, It's kind of a way to think about it.
Yeah. And JOID, and I talked to a bunch of guys, a bunch of like other pundits, who African American pundits from back, and he's a very important figure to that demographic within the African American community, because he was pretty much, when you watch pro wrestling, if your big thing is WWF, he's the first like major black wrestler in the 80s on WWF, and that's big for a lot of people. I know there was Bobo Brazil and all these other guys beforehand, but for the 80s kids, JYD was the black wrestler, the top black wrestler, this guy who had this charisma about him, and
I think
he's a draw. And I think that's also something that's significant as far as like him leaving that impression. And I know like sometimes we give a little bit more credence in that when we talk about guys having that cultural significance, but I think that kind of plays into it. And for like my vote, which my vote, if you were wondering, is a yes, because this man sort of like was this large figure, this huge figure in pro wrestling for the community, and for just as a draw. It's just, for me, I would just vote yes.
It's funny that you mentioned, because if when you were talking about the Jake Roberts program, were you thinking of the Michael Hayes program where he got blinded? Because that's the one that's his biggest drawing, show that he ever drew. Because I've been delving into.
Is that a?
Oh, no.
It's not a. I remember that one. Is that a world class program, or is like I remember like the fire? It's the fire. He gets blinded with the fire, right? Am I thinking about it?
That's in Mid South. Yeah,
That's Freebirds. Michael confuses me because he went everywhere. And like Puerto Rico, we had the Mid South and the world class and the local and then like TBS. Like we had like so many wrestling shows. It's kind of like insane. So I see Michael Hayes everywhere. But yeah, I don't remember that program.
Was it like the? Yeah, because that was when he was wearing the big sunglasses with his eyes. I'm about to do a JYD impression, but I do love that Michael Hayes program. I was just mentioning the Jake Roberts JYD program in Stampede, because that's just like
okay.
That's just for historical context of like him being sort of like in that era, and like where he would coming up through the territories. That's it. That's why I mentioned that program.
So actually, for purposes of completion, I'm kind of keeping track. So on Siki, we're all like no's, right? But
Yeah.
are you fine with Siki staying on the ballot? I'm a yes on him staying on the ballot, right?
For Doc, you go ahead.
I mean, for me, I would like to, because I haven't read any like people like sort of campaign.
You want to
for
read
him.
more on him, yes. You want to do more
like,
research on him, and
some of these
generally is
guys,
an indication that we want to see more. Yeah.
because some of these guys listed, we're gonna go through them. Like they have books written about them. They have like essays written about them. Well, and like not to say like Siki is like someone that's not important. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on the ballot. It's just like I would like to know more about him. That's all I'm saying.
I think when I say so I'm going to ask on Hall of Fame in the ballot, and we all think that. I mean, I think he should be on the ballot so we can discuss him more, but I wouldn't vote for him. That make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm going to be for people that are listening, and I'm going to be completely upfront. I do not have a vote. My partner Detlef, he has a vote, so maybe that's the reason why he didn't come. He doesn't do podcasts and stuff. So I don't have a vote. So I can't but for me personally, because of the nature of me collecting votes, and I just see the gamut of what people vote for, I'm not going to say who, like a no for anybody. I will tell my yeses though. So I won't say a no for Streaky.
Okay. That's fine. I will respect that. I mean, to be clear, I don't think Doc and I do not have votes, and we do talk to a lot of people who do, right?
Yeah.
We have opinions that I was joking with Doc that it the probability of me having a vote. So given some of the opinions I've had and some of the conversations I've had with people who are like really influential in this, and it's fine. We have them because it's fine to have disagreements on this. But like I'm like I'm the guy who goes like, yes, we're good, no more Brits, no more Brits on the ballot, no more Brits. Let's get other people from the rest of the world in, because and it's a whole conversation around like how influential that territory. We'll get into that, how influential that territory actually is in comparison
Yeah.
to some others. But effectively, to me, as I said, like I think we're good on that. Are we all yeses on Doc on Junkyard Dog?
I mean, if I had a ballot, I would.
Theoretically,
Yeah, if I
theoretically,
had a
yes.
ballot, I would vote for dog just because I was going to talk about my pet project for this summer that I've been doing is
Wait.
tracking how many stadium shows have been in the history of professional wrestling, and
Well,
I've
I
come up.
saw that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, like I'll one of these days I'll share it. I'll share it with the Discord, but I've got up to about 660 shows. And
Nice.
they range from, shows like in minor league ballparks to, the WrestleManias. You know what I'm saying? Like those type of shows. But even with even like small shows that I've seen like independent promoters put on, they load up those shows and try to sell as many tickets as they can for a stadium show. And just the nature of where you see WWE is going in terms of being the leader and um, increasing the amount of stadium shows, especially this year. I mean, the Survivor Series this year is going to be at Petco Park, and it's the
Yeah.
first time Survivor Series is going to be at a stadium. So, just the nature of that is just for me, just it was something a pet project of mine has kind of expanded to. I've started to track like boxing shows, have expanded, have done that, and also MMA shows, MMA shows, and kickboxing shows. A little bit less, but just with pro wrestling, it's an abundance, and just in particular with JYD. I think a lot of people that watch JYD in real time, you go back to those Louisiana Superdome extravaganza shows, and those for when he was on top, they drew really, really well. I would just pull up the numbers right now, but um, like when I mentioned before the match with Hayes, how he got blinded, and that's the genesis of that feud, and it um, the match the match at the Superdome. They drew claimed attendance of 36,000, paid attendance of 28,000. Gate was $183,000, which was big money back then, 1980. And if you just look at the shows that he did, he never. I'm looking at the shows he did at Superdome. The lowest he drew was about 15,000. And that's when he was under a hood at Stagger Lee against Ted DiBiase. So with that, I mean, it's just for that region in terms of right, and this, and you think about it from you think of 1980 to 1984, you're putting in multiple stadium shows, and this is before WWF goes goes national. When you think about it, and for him to do that in that region is a testament to how big he was. Because when you look at world class, they were doing stuff at Texas Stadium dating back to the 70s, but it was diminishing returns. Whereas JYD, you could see with the numbers, he is clearly the draw. And then when he leaves Mid South and they try to push guys like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Ted DiBiase, Butch Reed, it doesn't work. And you saw the fate of Mid South when it would happen. And then let's be clear, like DiBiase, he's in the Hall of Fame. He was in the inaugural Hall of Fame class in '96. But it's interesting to see that just because it is Mid South work, it doesn't as a draw in terms of those big shows. He doesn't hold up compared to Dog. Dog is the common denominator in all of these.
Yeah, man, that's that's incredible work you're doing with those stadium shows, man. That's and
Yeah, because like like if I could run it down, 1980 does 28,000. 1981, and July 4th, 1981, in an Orndorff lights out match, 18,000.
I mean, I think
Him,
you mentioned Orndorff. Also, Orndorff is also in the hall. Also, Orndorff is also like a secondary, tertiary draw. And yeah, we talked about Orndorff drawing with X person and X person and X person. But really, now we're talking about the guy who's actually drawing the house, who's
Yeah.
dog, right? As opposed to like the secondary. And like again, I was for Orndorff, and I'm like, this is the same reason like I get frustrated because like I think there are biases at play here because if it was anybody else like who had these numbers, they'd be in, right? That's my opinion with dog. I'm not gonna get into it, but like that's my opinion with it. Um, um, sorry, I jumped on that. By the way, like one thing that would be fascinating to me, and I'm really curious to see when you do that. I know you were talking about some of the Puerto Rico stadium numbers, and I'm really curious because people kind of don't understand how many stadiums they actually did in Puerto Rico. It's the whole thing,
yeah.
right? That's huge territory. But yeah, like I think we're kind of let me put it this way to you, like of the from the numbers you've seen, right? How would you rate JML like Junkyard Dog amongst the people who aren't in the hall or the stadium shows?
It's weird because just in terms of the sheer number of main eventers, I've sorted it out. The sheer number of main eventers, and I'm not done just amassing all these shows. Like I literally found some more today, but just mining through match results and stuff. But the the guy that's had the most main events in terms of state events is Handsome Jim Londos. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he's basically the guy that he was a massive draw back in the day. Behind him is Hogan. When you sort all those guys out, it's like Londos, Hogan, Roman Reigns. Roman had to get in. And he got in last year. He had 17 main events, which is insane. But if you sort
Wow.
all those guys out, all of these guys are main event. All these guys in terms of the main events, all these guys are Hall of Famers. Like I'm looking now, Triple H, Rock, Flair, Shinya Hashimoto, Keiji Muto, Steve Austin, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Luthez, Kazuchika Okada, Bruno, Undertaker, Toshi Onita, Shawn Michaels, Ricky Dozan, Buddy Rogers, Dimitri Tenryu, John Cena, Shinsuke Nakamura, and that's at 10. And then you have Dog. And he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think
Because
most
right
of the
Yeah, and
after
guys
actually,
you
that,
like,
named are in the Hall of Fame. I
yeah,
think.
they're
yeah,
all in.
I think they're all in.
And
they're all in.
did you mention Warrior? Does he have more than Warrior?
Yeah, he has more than Warrior. Because Warrior only had a couple, actually. The
Probably
Ultimate Warrior?
he has more than Goldberg, probably more than Warrior. I'm assuming he has more than Orndorff, right?
Yeah, in terms of Orndorff, he's main evented 4. That's what I have up right now. So, and Orndorff did good numbers too. Like the big event, like everybody talks about that, the big event with him and Hogan, Toronto. But he drew pretty well on top as a as a guy in terms of a really big stadium show. Yeah,
I would argue that Junkyard is I think probably the second biggest draw not in the hall of the guys on this list. Because I got to give it to Tiger Jeet. We'll get to Tiger Jeet in a bit. Like I'd probably put Tiger Jeet on top, and then I put Junkyard as the second. Like I don't think anybody else like drew at the level or for the length of time and the amount of houses that he did. Right? I mean, am I crazy to think that? Maybe Daryl Dixon's maybe the other one, but like we don't have the numbers necessarily for Dixon. But I'd say like Dog and Tiger Jeet are the two biggest draws on this list that are not in the hall, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Because
yeah, I mean, yeah.
Tiger GT also got like, because he has those, he has
Oh, like
3 runs
save
in
the Tiger
Japan.
Jeet.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about
Yeah,
it.
save the Tiger. We got to talk about Tiger. It's like, and actually, it's funny because Junkyard Dog and Tiger Jeet have the same kind of case, where like
Yeah.
they're massive draws, but the work, right? The work. I think I'm gonna say Dog is a significantly better worker than Tiger Jeet, but the bar is in hell for that. In terms of aura and like, I'm sorry, but like I've actually had some Tiger Jeet matches, and good lord, But effectively, in terms of aura too, in terms of aura, in terms of meetings or significance, in terms of how they do the houses and like how over they were. I mean, like yeah, I mean like on different sides of the world and like kind of different sides of the equation, but it's the same kind of big numbers that if they mean anything, they should probably be. To me, like this is to me. I understand like to people, but like yeah, to me there is like people will argue that maybe Dog is a bad worker, but to me he wasn't. He was fine for the area that he was. He wasn't as good as some of the others, but like I wouldn't call Dog the worst. Like I wouldn't call JYD the worst. The lesser the worst worker that gets in the hall. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the
So
thing with Dog, and I think a lot of people like to compare Dog to Goldberg just because of how it was a brief meteoric rise. How brief, how brief their push, not the push. I mean, the push was there, but how brief they were as massive draws and massive stars. With GYD, it might come out of left field, but somebody I've been thinking about over the last couple of years is Nobuhiko Takada. In terms of he got in '96. Basically in the first Dave. In 1996, Dave put together a class that we're automatically going to get in. But you think about with Takada '96. That was if you follow his career, '96 is when he has the feud, the UWFI New Japan feud, and it culminated with him dropping the title to Hashimoto. But for that, he drew massive houses in terms of across the country. But in terms of the big stadium shows, he did a show with Tenryu, did with Hashimoto, as I had mentioned, with Muto at the top of the year, the January 4th. And when you think about it, his spanned, I would guess, from 91 or 91, 92 to 96. Then he gets in, and we're not even talking about the Pride stuff where he draws massive houses there, even though he loses all his fights. But you think about it, he only has 6 years in terms of being a big star, because if you go to the previous UWF, it's Maeda. That's the thing about it. So he has a similar case in that. But if Junkyard Dog was the worker that Takada was, he'd be in already.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned the 6-year prime, because when we do the Basketball Hall of Fame, one of the big combos is the 6-year prime, right? We talk about like your best 6-year period against like everybody else is a 6-year Hall of Fame period, right? And to me, it's the simple answer with Dog is yes. I mean, yes, that 6-year period, like that period where he's on top, is a massive like period in one of the biggest periods in the history of the business. So I mean, what are we doing? Like, to me, like the Young Dark case is one of those where, like, yeah, I mean, come on. Like, sometimes you just gotta go, come on, guys. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I get it.
So are we I'm not saying yes on him, or?
Yeah, I think we're yes. Yeah. It sounds like we're all yes, right?
If I had a ballot, yes, I would vote Dog.
On the hypothetical, yes. Okay, so next. Right, because I'm gonna move on. There's a lot of really good cases on Yard. I invite you people to like find them. I mentioned like I put some links. Dragon King Carl did a case. I know there's a couple of episodes or articles from Voices of Wrestling. Rich Latta wrote a great post on that. There's a lot of good cases on him, and I'll mention when those exist so people can like go look for them. But like it's a good kind of thing to do. Next person is another person who has a lot of cases. She got 50% last year. It's June Byers. Background on her but June is one of the big two figures of like historical female wrestling in the U.S. Her and Mildred Burks, but like kind of Burke kind of won the war a little bit in the historical. But as people are revisiting, like there's a lot of like data that shows that she was as big a star. And really a significant kind of role. That like she was drawing on top. She was like everywhere. There's like a lot of really good articles on her. I I know that like we're going to talk a little more, but like I would be a yes on her, and it's a very simple yes. I've read some of these cases. I would like look it up, but to me, she's a very clear kind of like historical, foundational, important figure in the history of wrestling, right? To me, so it's a very simple yes to me.
Yeah. She was um she was very evident in establishing women's pro wrestling during that era. It was her and Mildred Burke at the time as the two top stars.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna get into the personal stuff, but like without June doesn't the scene doesn't like really become anything. I know that movie recently came out about her life, and that doesn't like affect me in that way. But like it's just there's no scene without her and Mildred. It's like 1A and 1B kind of thing for me, and then at the 1C is like Mula, but like it's just you don't have the scene without June Byers. You don't have the style kind of because you guys have watched their matches, right?
And I, yeah, kind of funny that you're mentioning 1A and 1B. We're gonna get into 1A and 1B situation a little bit later with the modern,
Yeah,
but like modern
yeah,
women, but like that's
yeah,
later.
yeah.
But yeah,
Because like if you watch the style back then, I'm gonna shout out my buddy Arctic. Shout out to you, buddy. And because like they have like showed us like a couple of matches from the Dumont network, and like the style that's wrestled on there that you see women wrestle is super stiff, which Miss June Myers was known for being one of the hardest hitting wrestlers at the time. And yeah, for me, I it's a yes because like without her, the foundation for women's pro wrestling is not there, and that's that.
if people have never seen her, there's footage for her. Like she's the
Yeah,
big Texan brawler is kind of her style, kind of is the way, and that there's some influence from like what she was doing. There's people who, like, I'm gonna sound crazy, but like guys like Brody, or guys like who worked like that big style that she was working with small, like she's big, so she was working like the
it's
big monster a little bit on that. It's actually kind of interesting when you watch it. The
yeah,
matches are interesting. Some of these, like watch these matches, you can see kind of the bones of what comes after. Obviously, there are moves that we take for granted that are missing, but it's really interesting to go back and look at that stuff.
yeah,
You can.
yeah. You bring up Brody, and I'm just like, because she does this style where she's like a little overwhelming, and she's like a wild woman, and
Yeah.
like you kind of just like
No, I'm saying.
she
Yeah, I mean,
gets
like,
she gives you this
yeah.
sense of dread in there, and it's like it's awesome. It's so awesome, and I want people to like
So
seek
the
these matches
so
out.
the I think from a significance, it's like there's these archetypes that we're used to now when we watch these matches. But like you got to remember these archetypes were being come up with on the fly. That's that she's the big kind of brawly kind of. You'll recognize it. Like me, obviously I'm a Puerto Rican, so I'll recognize the Brody style immediately. Or like Stan Hansen works like that too, where like it's a big dude, like and rough and athletic and kind of like throws people around and yeah, like that. You see that like when you watch like Hechicero work now, like where like it's a big and he's working like in the Flyers, and obviously he's doing a lot more stuff, but like it's a big kind of rougher guy working with the smaller kind of person, and it's
Yeah,
that's the style. It's actually really interesting to watch. And like I said, like she's not a bad worker either. She's like so influential, not a bad worker. I would say to me, it's fairly easy. Yes.
With buyers, it's tough. If I had a ballot, that would be a tough. That'd be one of my last cuts, I would think. I know she's. It's funny because she's super historical significant, but yeah, it would be tough for me to. She'd be a borderline for me.
that's that's perfectly fine, man.
That's
Because
perfect. I mean, that's perfectly
that's
fair.
perfectly
I mean, I
fine.
understand that. I mean, like, so Doc, and then like, I'm gonna leave you open right now, right? We'll see if you
Yeah,
decide. Like, well, I'll press you when we're closer to like finishing. The next one is my first no. British Bulldogs, Davy Boy and Dynamite Kid, and so they got 48% last year. Highest was 52. Been on the ballot for 4 years. And like, look, here's the thing for me, and I'll get into it later. But like, essentially, Dynamite is in, right?
yeah,
Dynamite is in. Dynamite is a historically great worker. He's important. He's in that class of the first kind of like him, Owen, like Eddie, Owen. Those kind of like that very new style, like Tiger Mask. Like that style is really important. And then you get them like this is kind of like to get like basically get bulldog in, and no, like they're not to me they don't have a long uh they don't have a long enough career. The work rate's not there. I would never consider them like one of the best tag teams in the world. I don't believe their style is influential on top of like this is like when you had the Hard Foundation, which like their style on top of Dynamite is not influential. So like the addition of
Yeah.
Davey does not want to be getting to work. Like I no, I don't. To me, it's easy. I'm fine with them being on and having a somewhat conversation. They haven't really created a lot of conversation around it. I know Alan on has talked about it on Twitter, and that's one of the links that I had. Like basically, like where like, but it's I would not consider them somebody that like defined a style or like made something different. Like to me, it's a very easy no. Like and also like again, I'm of the opinion, and this is my bias that I think there's enough Brits relative to the strength of the territory compared to other areas, and they're not a priority for me, right? Like, sorry, like fans, like, but I think there's way more than enough relative to like other areas. And as I said, Dynamite's already in, and I'm good. I'm good with Davey Boy not being in the Hall. It's not the Hall. It's the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of pretty good, or even good, right? That's
Yeah.
a little bit mean, but like it's like nothing. Like I was a big Bulldogs. I liked the Bulldogs when I was a kid. I loved to watch them, but I never thought like I'm watching something that's like groundbreaking. I'm not going back and going like, oh wow, these matches. It's not like me going back and watching Misawa and going like, holy crap. Watching like Benoit or watching like Eddie or watching like there's a lot of people I'll go back and watch in that era that I'm like, oh wow, this is great, but not the Bulldogs, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Go ahead.
it's tough for me because I personally I probably like the Bulldogs more than you do in terms of their work. The only thing is that if you look at the landscape of the WWF back in the '80s, I mean, they were working against the Dream Team. Basically main eventing, and we talked about the headlining those B shows. With the Dream Team, Greg Valentine and Bruce Beefcake, but also the Hart Foundation. So you have those teams, but at the same time, you have so many other tag teams in the '80s in terms of just in Crockett alone. Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, Tully and Arn. There's so many other tag teams um,
Youngblood and
that
Steamboat.
you think Youngblood and Steamboat in the early '80s, but also um, there's a, I'm blanking, but there's other tag teams, and you think about it, like I personally like the Bulldogs, but it would be tough for me to. They would even maybe case. I would have to think about it a lot more in
Look,
terms of the drawing. I'd
it
like
took
their
the
work.
it,
Go
it
ahead,
took the
Otero.
midnight. It took the Midnights and the Rock and Roll Express more than 10 years to get in both cases.
Mm-hmm.
The Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express. Tully and Arn aren't in, right? And as I said, Dynamite is already in. Like, I have no impetus or drive to spend. If I like had a theoretical battle, I would not spend it here because
Hmm.
there are better candidates, there are better tag teams in front of them, and then judging by how the hall treats like tag teams, like they're not to me they're not somebody who's in a mission, right? As I said, if Dynamite wasn't in, that would be a completely different story, right?
Yeah.
This was my
Correct.
chance to
Yeah.
vote for Dynamite Kid, but Dynamite Kid is already in the hall. I don't need to spend the year. I get what people are voting for it,
Yeah.
but like to me, it's not something that kind of like is required.
I
Yeah. I mean, it's weird because Dave's put on Davy Boy by himself. In '98, he got 10% of the belt, 10% of the less than 10% of the vote. And in 2006, got less than 10% of the vote. So I think with Dave, he's trying to put in. I mean, and it's Davy Boy's best shot to get in terms of bunching him with the tag teams. I mean, I've liked Davy Boy by himself. I personally like him, just like his work. If I put on random Raw from that era, from the late '95 era, the New Generation era, it's probably going to watch Davy Boy or Owen or Brett. It's they were really good workers, and has a lot of replay value from that time. But terms of a tag team, in terms of the historical significance of them, I find it hard. I'm siding with you more and more just talking about it, Arturo, just thinking about it, just because
I
of the
mean,
tag teams
this
of the
is
'80s.
it's who is in, who's out, and is it something where I'm going like, okay, like if I take like again, I'm only taking basically I'd be like saying, oh, if I take uh Davy Boy out, like is that I'm like it doesn't really impact things that much, right? As I said, Dynamite's already in, so it's kind of it becomes the thing where I'm like, it's nice that they're trying to get him in, but like, we'll talk about it a little bit later. There's a Mexico. There's one particular, there's a tag team in Mexico that's similar to that, where like one of the guys is already in, right?
Hmm.
And the other guy isn't. But in that case, when you go look, these guys like were a massive, massive, massive act, just gigantic act,
Yeah.
right? And Drew House is on top, and like Drew House is everywhere, and like just like people talk of them like legends. Whereas like I mean like the Bulldogs are a nice little tag team, right? But like people talk about Dynamite, but they don't reconcile like they don't talk about the Bulldogs like that, right?
I
As I
mean,
said, it's the
what do you?
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, but and you were saying like you take Bulldog out, nothing really changes. I mean, we have actual evidence when Johnny Smith was in the tag team, and it didn't. But the thing is, it didn't really hit the same when they were a tag team in All Japan. I mean, you kind of had to have Bulldog there, so that's a plus on that board. You can't really take Bulldog out. They are the British Bulldogs. You put in Johnny Smith, they're not really that tag team. And
Yeah, I mean,
by '89, Dynamite was shot physically.
yeah, I mean, it gets into a really weird space for me. Like, I understand why they're on the ballot. Like, to me, like, yeah, they should be on the ballot. Like, they should be on the ballot, definitely. Have a conversation, have a discussion, but like, I don't see myself. I would never see myself voting for them. There's no timeline where there's enough candidates cleared in front of them. I'm like, yes, definitely, and I'm not going to be advocating for them as the winner. Like, it's like to me, it's the easiest no that we've seen. Like to me, it's the first easy no for me. Like, yes, no, it's okay, right? Okay, right? Like Doc,
Yeah. So
where are you at on these guys?
okay, I'm gonna be honest here because we've had this discussion before, um, and like I'm huge on Davey Boy Smith. I'm huge on Dynamite. I love the Bulldogs as a team. I love their run in WWF. I love the run in All Japan where I think they were fighting for the All Asia belts, and like as I as what happens, like you think about the more influential tag teams of the '80s. We talked about them. Midnight's rock and roll, even like Demolition. Um, Even at the time, like I'm thinking about these big tag teams like the Road Warriors, and I think of we'll talk about them next, but like Dynamite's in, right? Dynamite's in. His singles career is great. The tag stuff on top of it kind of put him over the top for me. And when I think about Davey Boy, this kind of reminds me a bit of, which is bullshit because Akira Taue should have went in. Was did he go in? But
Yes,
like,
Holy Demon
Yeah, you
Army,
got
right?
yeah, he
Holy
got in
Demon Army.
Holy
Yep.
Demon Army. He should have got in on his
But he
own.
should.
My
Yeah,
opinion.
but no, I've had this fight with like the people who like I said like put him back on the ballot, like, and people are like got mad, but I'm like, if you put him back on the ballot, he like they took him out before just the year before he would have gone in, like the way Japan works, he would have gone in, he would be already in. They just took him out,
Yeah,
and I'm like, and he should be. There's a guy who should be in twice. Like you can talk me into him, and you can talk me into the Holy Demon Army, easy, right?
yeah,
Because essentially he is important as an independent, like as a wrestler, and he's important
yeah,
as a member of a tag team, which is influential, one of the best tag teams in the world.
yeah.
And Bulldog isn't that, right? So I'm like, I'm not like, I can't I can't bring myself in comparison to that.
Yeah.
So would you be a
Because
yes or no, Doc? You didn't answer.
well, I was going to get to my answer, but like when you put all that aside, because like we're not counting British Bulldogs' full career, right? We're just counting the run of the Bulldogs, and like
Yes. You're
I'm a
supposed to
huge
just count
fan.
the tag team. Although you can, oh, you can count the. I would. I'm an advocate of counting the rivalries too. Like if they had a breakup angle, but these guys really didn't. So
Yeah,
but
because
that'll come up.
I gotta say, this hurts so much. This hurts so much because I love them as a team, but like it just it's not it. It's not it. That's gonna be a
Okay, so
no.
you're a no. Okay.
Yeah.
JML, theoretically, would you be a yes or a no of them?
Be a
So,
maybe. Be a maybe.
okay,
Just
I'm
I
gonna lead
definitely
by.
see the positives. Like you can't, like I said before, like
Yeah.
we tried without Evie and it didn't work with Johnny Smith. Like Bulldogs are the team, but also you have to think of the teams in the '80s. There's so many other teams that that are in the Hall of Fame already that were better than them. Like you have Neidhart and Bret Hart. I that's we'll talk about that later. We get to it, but also there's a team. Basically, it's that's when talking and figuring it
Yeah,
out. It's really hard. It's really hard
we're
to
gonna
justify it.
there's a couple of teams in here that like are legitimately like giant bras, right? And we're gonna get to that. So okay, so next we're gonna talk about the Von Erichs. There's been a lot of ink on the Von Erichs. There's a movie about the Von Erichs. There's documentaries about the Von Erichs. There's case studies around them. Ultimately, I mean, I would probably be a yes on Carrie, right? When Carrie was in, and I think once you put them all together, I I would say that it's really important to have them in. They were a drawing concern. I understand the reasons around that, but it's an important part of the history of wrestling to me, and it's one that I lived through. I was watching World Class. So to me, like
Mm.
the Von Erich should be in, right? I understand that's somewhat my bias, but I do think that like there's enough meat there, and none of them are in. And I would just say that yeah, I think Kevin, Gary, and David should be in. There's a lot we can kind of unpack. Like, I mean, I kind of think David would have been a Hall of Famer on his own if he obviously, haven't needed a champion, right? That show that I watched live, by the way, um, on TV, and I would again, I think that they're an important part of a lot of history of wrestling. The Freebirds, Flair, World Class, we already mentioned. A lot of things just go through those three guys, and I mean, obviously, yes, there is a lot of what ifs, but I think and what exists there is enough for me to say yes, right? I am a bit of a biased person. I do think that, like, historically, yeah, I mean, they're cool. They should be there, right? With warts and all. And I understand kind of all the reasons, but I would say, yeah, I think the Von Erichs need to be there, right? Uh, you know, I know people have very strong opinions on this, but I'm like, I mean, like, they're close. I mean, I would say that eventually they are going to get in, but I'm like, I mean, they might fall off because the movie has been out for a while. But I'm a very there's a lot of really hot angles like that were built around the family. I think it's important to have them in. To me, right? Doc.
Um,
Absolutely. I'm leaning, if I had a ballot, I lean towards yes. Just for the fact that we talked about before, you can't, you know, in terms of basically the Hall of Fame, it tells the story of pro wrestling. You can't tell the story of pro wrestling without the Von Erich story. And I've always thought, even before I started tracking the public ballots, I've always looked at the ballots throughout the years. I've seen Kerry; he struggled on the ballot. I've seen Kevin. Kevin didn't last that long. I always thought if you put Kevin, Kerry, and David together, they would have a fighting chance. And Dave finally did that recently. And I think I'm with you, Arturo. I think they'll get him, but to me, it's just too much of a historical significance. I mean, Fritz is in obviously. He's a Hall of Fame promoter and wrestler, big draw. But um, that family is an integral part of pro wrestling history. And if you don't mention the Von Erichs in terms of telling the story of pro wrestling, um, I have to question you. To me, I think they are. What happened in World Class is something that everybody needs to know if you're a wrestling fan.
yeah. Because a lot of the theme for this is, would the history of pro wrestling be the same without this act or this wrestler, right? And to your point, there's been stories, documentaries like this. This is a now sort of a widely known curse, right? The curse of the Von Erichs. And when you have that sort of, whether it be notoriety or infamy in some cases, it's just like you can't really tell the story of pro wrestling without the Von Erichs. And for Fritz, his boys were his biggest drawing act for the company. Um, these three boys in particular in this trios, and we talk about the feud with the Freebirds. They've had other feuds, but like you really cannot tell the story of pro wrestling without them. And I gotta say, like, it's leaning towards yes.
I mean,
And I
I
think
think there. One of the things that kind of gets forgotten about this era is like there was a lot of these territories died in that era because of the big oil recession that hit like around I forget 89, 90. So some of that is like they get dinged because the territory kind of died, but I think a lot of that like happened to Watts and happened to a couple other people where like it wasn't necessarily, I mean, some of it was a downturn in the business, but it was compounded by the fact that it hit with like people just didn't have money to go to shows, right? So that killed the houses, right? And since they weren't necessarily doing TV contracts at the level everybody else was, and then Vince was kind of putting up the pressure, it kind of kills some territories. But they were a drawing act and drawing concern at a national level because World Class was syndicated everywhere, and they were national stars, right? So like
yeah,
people, I mean, there were huge stars in Dallas, but they were also national stars. So I think like from a objective drawing perspective, an objective star power perspective, I think kind of they're there. I mean, I think again, like some of that is with because like I mean, David would have been NWA champ, and there's a lot of reason to think that like Vince wanted to get behind Kerry, but obviously Kerry had his like he lost his foot and the whole thing where like it just, I mean, it just again snake bit, but like the talent and potential was there. They drew at at like a local like hugely in Dallas, and they were a national draw on TV, and other factors kind of compounded that. So again, like to me, it's very easy to say yes, right? Particularly as an act, right? As all three. And I understand that, but like I mean, like I understand that like within the technical, if you get technical, it gets like a little fuzzy. But to me, it's fairly easy to say, hey, I want the Bon Erics in my hall to tell my story, right?
yeah,
Doc, are
like
you a yes on
that's
them too?
yeah.
Okay, so
It's because
we're all yes.
it's the
We're all
whole it's the
yes.
whole yeah, it's the whole thing of like, would wrestling be the same without them in it? And like, no, this is the story is so powerful that it's transcending like 40 years after like the company has is gone. 40 years, like 41 years after David dies. It's just, it's an enduring story that like keeps getting brought back into other ways. And you know I never experienced like it personally, but it's just, you mentioned like WCCW, you mentioned the Von Erichs, and where they were like national stars, global stars. If you talk about where they were, because like so many countries had actually aired theirs, aired that show everywhere, so they were
David
like,
David was well, David was being prepped to be a national traveling champion. That was when he
yeah,
died. He was being prepped to be like the national. So, and then Kerry kind of stepped into like Kerry. I mean, obviously it was a bit tougher for him, but he was kind of like being stepped up to like be the like big time babyface, and then his demons kind of got in the way too. So like I mean, these are guys that people kind of like you know
they
they
saw
drew,
that
and
in
people
them.
wanted to like do more with him. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and then obviously, I mean, it just it's just the way sometimes things happen. I don't want to get too deep into that, but like let's go into like Ole Anderson is the next one. He got 45 as his max. He's been on about 6 years. He got 40 last year. Ole, man, Ole's really interesting to me because I've evolved on him. Like I am not as hot on his booking record because if you start looking at it and you dig at it, the periods where he was booking are not necessarily the most successful periods for that, and there's other things kind of going on around them. There's other bookers around too. But as a worker and as a draw, I put in like the thing I put in as a reference for him is the great heel turn on Ole Anderson. Sorry, on Dusty Rhodes, where there's this episode if you've never seen it, where Judge of Champions Wrestling after he turns on him, we're like basically just it's Ole just narrating what he did and how he kind of turned, and he tricked Dusty and he did this whole thing in kayfabe to like, it's it's just the essence of who he was as kind of this heel heat magnet, right? And he was important to a lot of things. And honestly, I'm a yes on him right now. I might get talked to it out after we go through the whole list, but I'm a yes on him now, right? I might like, but he's a tentative yes for me, is Oli, right? It's just there's enough there that I'm a tentative yes on him, right? I'm gonna leave him open because I'm not like I think I might run out of votes like a little bit further down. So I'm like I'd be a yes, tentative yes on him. Can be on my short list. Is the way to put it.
Definitely on my short list as well. I mean, Oli. I mean, there's a lot of things you think about him personally. I mean,
Oh, yeah, he's cantankerous old fuck, but yes,
yeah,
yeah.
But I mean, as a draw and as a worker, I mean, if you actually watch him, sat down and watch him work, he's really really good. It's just that I would have to dig in more into um, just his more in his early history in terms of Georgia. That's what I have to go with. But on if I had to immediately think about it, I would say maybe the maybe vote for me.
Yeah, we're gonna get into some really interesting candidates here. Like after we go through, like where are you at on Oli, Doc?
No, I'm just gonna say
Okay,
no.
so you're no. It's fine. I get it. I know. We're like so because next one is Sputnik Monroe, right? Sputnik Monroe. He got the 50th.
Yeah, we're gonna do a little bit of talk on Sputnik because Sputnik Monroe. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're back here. And I'm just gonna give you the floor again, Toro. So you just go ahead, bro.
So Spud Monroe is a kind of an important figure in Memphis, and not just in wrestling, but as holistically as kind of a person who desegregated the wrestling shows. He was going to, he was essentially just, he was big in the black community and with the black fans. They really got behind him, and it wasn't just a thing where like they were behind it, but he was also behind them. He was there's songs written about him and stories written about him, and he would go to like the blacks only bars in Memphis, and he would go to like he would socialize with them. He would kind of like reach out, like he would get them and he would let them into force the promoters to let them into buildings, which was a really big deal in the 50s. Like he was kind of like in the deep south in Memphis, being a person who was championing that, like, and wanted to kind of valued those fans and treated them as just fans, right? And again, like there's a lot of if you're willing to look it up, there's a lot of things written about him. And like he was also kind of like he was a very over wrestler in the town. He's like very over. He was like a drawing concern in Memphis, which is an important territory, which is probably historically underrepresented in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. So I'm very much a clean yes on him because of the importance to that territory, because of the drawing and everything else. And I think it's like Memphis is underrepresented in the Hall. So I'd be a yes on him.
With Sputnik, historic. If I had a ballot, the historical significance would push me to say yes, but in terms of you say he's a draw in Memphis, yes, but he's worked other places like Texas, and he wasn't that big of a draw. I mean, he had his fair share of main events, but he wasn't like biggest draw like in Texas and Arizona and that places. But
Correct. Yeah, no,
um,
I agree with that. It's not something like, we'll get into like Doral Dixon, and Doral Dixon's the guy who drew in a lot of places, right?
right, right.
Um, and then like I've seen matches with Doral Dixon working in Madison Square Garden, right, in WWE on top, and he was working Texas on top. He working other places on top. So yeah, no, I get that argument. I think part of that, as I mentioned, is I think Memphis is underrepresented historically in the Hall, and I think that he's an important figure in Memphis and also kind of a draw in that territory, which I think is It's an important territory. It's also underrepresented. If that makes sense, right? So I
That
kind of
definitely
like
makes sense. Yep.
Right. So that's a little bit of a tweak. It's like if I was talking like, I was talking like maybe Puerto Rico's underrepresented. If I was talking to somebody like I want on the ballot, I've said, hey, maybe put Savio Vega and TNT on the ballot, like as a guy who there's been worse guys, and he was kind of an important figure, and he still is an important figure within the scene. And as I said, I think it's kind of underrepresented relative to the size of the houses that were being drawn, right, and relative to the influence on modern wrestling, maybe. And I think the same thing with Memphis. I think Sputnik is an important figure in important territory, right, with an important legacy beyond wrestling, right. And I think that puts me over on him, right. I get I get the concern. I understand why he's gone up and down. He's not. If I saw a better candidate than him, I might cut him, right? In some years, right? It would depend, right? Like right now I have him as a yes, but like ask again later after we go through some of these others. I have 4 votes on the board, and like I only have 6. And this is gonna get kind of tough a little bit further down. Doc, where are you at on Sputnik?
Well, you know, on different discords that we're on different forums that I'm on, I've always been a big pusher of Sputnik Monroe as far as like, because they're like, to to your credit, there's books written about him, there's songs written about him, how he's seen, because there's something important about what he was doing. He was saying, black or white, it doesn't matter. Money is green. That's something that he said.
Yes.
And
yes.
yeah, I like, because like, so about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, there was this movie that came out, Memphis Heat, right? Speak to your point about the lack of coverage on Memphis, but it was a movie. They went over the guys did it. There was Sputnik Monroe, there was Jackie Fargo, superstar Bill Dundee, Jerry Lawler, Jerry Jarrett was in there. And like, the thing that stood out to me about Monroe, because they also have a Sputnik Monroe Day that they celebrate over there in Memphis, and it's just like the way that this guy stood out, and how he, during the time of civil unrest, during the civil rights movement, he saw it as an opportunity to sort of like go with that audience, and he would still get heat with the white audience, but if you watch those matches, he would get Toro knows this because Lucha Libre, you'd have like the Rudo section, and
Yeah.
they would go crazy for Sputnik. And it's funny because he was also Sputnik, that's like a Russian gimmick. So like, he was gonna get heat regardless. So I
think
because I actually kind of did a report on him when I was taking some humanities classes, and this was a class I took on African American history. I kind of tied my wrestling into it and all that stuff, and like how there's allies within like the movement. There's allies, right? And there's something to what he did that is sort of like, because we're talking about the days when they would throw batteries, when they would stab you, when they pull out a gun on you, and all that stuff, right? Those are white heat. That's what we're talking about, Memphis heat. And the way that he stood out to me, and it's just like when you think about that territory, you go on YouTube, you'll find like so many like things covering him dating like so long ago. So I've done my research on him. I've sort of like, he kind of has this folklore about him too, which I think is also kind of, yeah, he's like it's a folk hero thing. So like he kind of like just, in this minority community, we kind of call it a trill ass white boy, and Sputnik was the trill ass white boy that would go to the
I
Memphis
think
jazz bars and like do all that stuff. And I think that's important to build a community. Like when we're talking about building audiences, we're talking about guys going out there and being men of the people. And he was one of those guys that would go out and take pictures shaking hands with people, putting his arm around other black people, and treating these people as people. And as for me, because like that's kind of a thing for me of whether it's historical significance or just like looking back at that era and then what that really means. And I just got to say, like, he's a yes for me because of all of that stuff, and the fact that he's a folk hero is kind of it's just for me that's how it hits. And I know we have like territorial legends. We just talked to them like about the Von Erichs, um, you know, and like I that's what I got to say about Ole Anderson, not Ole Anderson. Sorry, that's what I got to say about Sputnik. I'm a yes on him because uh, sometimes we get a little bit biased on these things, but I just sort of see him like as sort of on that level. And like Memphis is an important territory to the history of pro wrestling, and whether it's Jackie Fargo or Jerry Jarrett, there's also Sputnik as part of like before Jerry Jarrett. Sputnik is like one of those legendary guys, like the Tojo Yamamoto kind of those names, and he was a star in that era, and he's just important to the history of that territory. And so that's
yeah,
all I got to say about
he's
that.
a good point. He's a folk hero. We'll talk about it a little more. He's a larger than life figure in an important territory, and I think that's important. I think one thing I'll mention is like I saw this great documentary on the Sears catalog, right? And the reason I mention it is one of the things that they mentioned is one of the reasons it got over, and it was really important, was that the Sears catalog would sell to you independent of your race, right? And this was in an era where like if you were not white you were denied access to a lot of goods. Like the person who was running the town store could deny you access to like better clothes or like better tools or better like food. And just the idea of being able to do business and get the things that you need, a suit for an interview and that kind of thing, was really important to people. It was like something that was like a big change. So I think people underestimate like how important just simply being able to get into a show, right? And
Yeah.
being able to like spend your money on something that you wanted to see, entertainment product, like everyone else was to non-whites back in that era. And I think that's something that I think when we have the historical blinders on where we don't understand it necessarily. And I think that's kind of I go by why, like I said, like he's a folk here in the area for good reason, right? People still talk about him to this day. So I do think that like that actually like says to me that like yes, it's someone who is important. Like if this like it might be like I might be less inclined. It was a less important territory to me, but I think this is like a really important territory to wrestling as a whole too, and I think that's part of like why I'm a yes on. Next one, Wild Bull Curry. Boy, he, I think he's a deserving candidate, right? I'm at 4 votes already, right? And I want to save my last two. So he's a maybe for me for like Oli, he's a maybe for me for now. He's a worthwhile candidate. He's a candidate that I would possibly vote for if I had the votes left over. But if I had a ballot for this year, I would not be spending it on Wild Bill Curry, probably. Damn, I hate that, but it is what it is. Doc?
Um, Wild Bill Curry, you'll probably know him from if you watch like if you see like old like posters and stuff. He's the guy with the crazy eyebrows. He he's a Lebanese descent, like Sabu and the Sheik after him. And actually, he before the Sheik, he was kind of the wild man character who kind of like did the wild bloody brawls. But I would not use my vote on him.
He is like I think I'm kind of like I'm going by like I pulled up Alan Cheapshot's like argument, and he is a massive, massive draw for a very, very long time. He's a guy who drew everywhere. And he said he was kind of the Brody archetype, right? That very like that wild man archetype, that kind of like work everywhere. And as I said, he is a very worthwhile candidate, right? I just have two people that like I am waiting. Like my last two votes, I am saving for two. Let's say acts, right? And so, as much as I hate it, right, I can't use my vote on him. But he is definitely a worthwhile candidate. He's like, as I said, like he was filling arenas everywhere, right? And as you're saying, like he's also the archetype for like the Brodies, the Sheik, that kind of Sabu, the wild man kind of archetype.
Yeah.
So definitely a historically significant figure. Definitely a guy who he this is my first. I hate that I can't use my vote. Like my fictitious vote. I'm like the
It's
first
so
time. I'm
hard,
like,
man.
oh god. Like I can live with not voting for Oli, but it kills me not to be able to vote for Wild Bill. Damn it. Okay. Hey Mel, what do you think?
Uh, that's somewhat. Wild Bill Curry is someone I have to do a little bit more research on, but definitely has a case. He definitely has a case in terms of pioneering the hardcore style, and I've heard people talk about him before. Just him and there's a case for a pimp. It's funny because him and Pampero Firpo, they have similar
Yeah.
cases, just in terms of that style and but yeah, I would have to take a little bit more time to really investigate him.
Yeah, it's like it's a simply a case where like you run out of votes sometimes, and with him, I think it's a case where like I think are we all maybes or are we all no's on him?
Because I can't put my
We're,
vote for
we're not
him,
gonna find
but
we're not
I
gonna find
would keep
like
him on the ballot. That's kind of what
if I
that's kind of
haven't
where
if
I'm at.
he I would vote for him to get in the hall, but I don't have enough. I can't. I don't. Six
Yeah,
votes is not enough to get to him. Basically,
yeah.
is we're out of.
Yeah.
So
It's
he's
it's
gonna get a zero
crazy.
from all three of us, and we're all gonna hate ourselves for it.
I feel bad
Next
for him,
one
man.
is kind of the opposite. And I feel bad for him, but like he's the guy who would vote. Like next guy, Cabo Ellis, he's gotten 28% of the vote. I would be a yes on Cabo Ellis, and because he's a guy who, similar to Curry, like is also like they're similar candidates. I think I would rate slightly higher. He also like drew in Puerto Rico, so I'm kind of like I'd be a
Okay.
yes. I'd be a yes on him. But it's like again, we're getting into like yeah. Mm, you
Yeah.
know what? I'm gonna take that back. I'm
Oh,
gonna go. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go maybe on him, and I think I'm not gonna have a vote for him. Sadly, damn it.
yeah.
Because I just realized that I need to. I need two more votes.
I'm looking at what we have coming up next, man.
The
I
thing about
you know
I want to go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, the thing about Cowboy Bob Ellis is that we, for the longest time, people thought he was still alive, and then we found out he passed away in 2018. So,
Hmm.
like, how does that work? Because I've been trying to update. We have a sheet internally that started about the observer death bump, and it's a real thing. And we wanted to see. I mean, people actually knew about Cowboy Balabalis' death in 2018 and didn't get a death bump, but I want to see it would go in terms of the voting this year because last year he only had 28% of the vote. So I think there'll be a slight bump, but not that much. I mean, he's been trending a little bit downward a little bit, but we'll see.
I think here's the thing. I think that of the last two candidates we talked about, right, Curry and Bob Ellis, I think Curry's the guy who probably will eventually go in because someone's going to write a Wild Bill Curry kind of retrospective, kind of like we've seen some of these cases before, where like you go like you look at it in whole and go like, yeah, okay. And I think also like some like you'll clear some of the guys in front of him and like you'll be more votes. Ellis nobody's written it for Ellis, and Ellis has been on the ballot, what, 12 years now? And I don't know, like when he gets to that last kind of like year, like I think he's like 2 years removed from like getting to 50, like 14, 15, where like he's gonna need to get 50. So he's a guy who might fall off. I think Curry's a guy who will kind of move up because there's a lot of there's it's a similar case, but I think like it is probably better with Curry, right? But again, we're
Yeah,
getting
I
into
mean
like
with
kind of
Yeah.
with Ellis, I mean if Dave's counting, if he's not counting the years that he left him off and just put him back on, because he got on the ballot
Oh,
2010.
okay. So I've had the long conversation with people who are talking to me directly on this, and so
Hmm.
supposedly the rule is you have 15 years to get on from the first time you're on the ballot, right? Unless you're Adam Copeland. Um, in which case the rules are like, but effectively you have 15 years from the time you get on, time you get off. The reason with Adam Copeland is supposedly because he's an active wrestler. He's still in the middle of that, so it's stretching his prime. Although we're trying to convince, like when I say I'm trying, we're talking to people, we're talking today and say like, no, just he's been on. I think Edge has been on for, I think he's on year 16 now. Like
Yeah.
God, it's like I'm getting
Since
to modern, like so.
2009. Yeah.
Edge has been on for 16 years. So there's
Yeah.
like, and I was gonna get to this later, but essentially we're like, there's a lot of people like we've been trying to pitch just Paul next year. Say, look, he needs to get 50% of the voters. He's off, right? And the reason I was trying to say that is you need an endpoint because nobody's talking about Edge. I can't find a case for it. Nobody's making the case for Edge. So if nobody's talking about it and it hasn't moved, you need to put an endpoint on it and make it next year. Next year, the ballot for modern should be clearer than it is this year, and he'll get his best chance to get 50%. And you'll have a conversation around him, and you either have him on or he falls off, and then Dave can put him back on with Christian immediately. Fine, which whatever. You might be able to convince me more if it's Edge and Christian than it is Edge. But if effectively you want to have these conversations and put them on, like, but yes, but getting back to the point, which was Cabo Ellis would be to the year, like, so basically when he gets to 15, he's gonna get into the eligibility from the first time he's on, right? Even though he fell off and came back on.
Yeah, I mean, if Dave's counting when if he's not counting the years that he was left off the ballot, it's been 11 years for him. Now, the thing is that he got on the ballot in 2010, got less than 10% of the vote, and then came back on in 2015. So it depends on what
You're
Dave's going to
saying you're
count.
saying if we count that, well, the other case where that happened was I got into an argument with this about there's a candidate is probably gonna be the first candidate to ever fall off the ballot, get voted off the ballot 3 times. Now we were talking about Kerry Von Erich. Somebody said like no, but he fell off the third time. But the third time Kerry fell off, he didn't get voted off. Kerry kind of is a weird eligibility thing. I think is like I forget it's like 30 or 40, and then like Dave took him off and then put him and his brothers on. So it's not like getting less than 10% of the vote 3 times. So yeah, it's possible that Ellis needs to get triggered on this next one, and if he does, I don't know that he's gonna get on, right? So like, yeah, he may fall off. Let's get to a simple one. Iron Sheik, love the cheeky baby. He's a hard no for me, right? I like him. He's important of an era, but he's not a Hall of Famer, right? I don't have
Yeah,
to
I have to be.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I like Sheik. I have a sweatshirt from Roots of Fight,
Yeah.
the Iron Sheik shirt, so it's very comfortable. But good career, but I'd have to say no. I mean, he won.
Oh, he has a fascinating life story, like him being friends with Saddam
Yes.
Hussein. Like, there's some stuff in his life that you're like, and being the Olympic, he was an Olympic wrestler. He was a
Yeah.
legit world class elite athlete before he fell apart. But like, I mean, Iron Sheik is a really interesting person to like dig into. He's not a Hall of Famer. I mean, he does tick some of the folk hero boxes. He's not big enough for a draw. Not a big work rate guy. I mean, he's good enough to be on the ballot, yes, but no, he's a no for me. Like, I think we're all
He's
kind
got
of
a
like,
case.
yeah,
Yeah, he's got a case. If the category was weaker, he'd have a bigger
yeah.
case, but not right now. No.
It's
Now,
it's
okay,
kind
so
of too
here's a question
strong.
for you. What if
It's too strong right
it
now, man.
was let me throw a curveball at you. What if it was Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov?
Then I have to think about how long of a tag team they were. Um, I don't know.
They remind me a little bit of Ted Cozy, like Ted Cozy. It'd be like a little bit Ted Cozy. Obviously, they're not nowhere near the workers Ted Cozy are, but it's an interesting kind of like, oh, what if we put him together with Nikolai? I still be a no, but it might be a more fun conversation actually.
Yeah,
Not that,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, she got like 28% of the vote, but I mean, I don't think like you don't know where the rest of the sport is coming from. Okay, let's get to one of my yeses, which is Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard with J.J. Dillon. They got 49% of the vote highest. They got 24% last year on year 9. Look, if we're talking about the greatest tag teams of all time, I mean, in a Hall of Fame, I need Arn and Tully in the Hall. I need Arn and Tully in the Hall, and I need them as a tag team in the Hall. And unless you put the Four Horsemen on as a group, I'm gonna be a yes on Arn and Tully because I think they should be in. Right? It's to me, like they're just like extremely important guys in the history. Now I understand that the definition is a little weird in how they're doing it because like JJ's there too.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like Arn, Tully,
that's what
and
throws me off
JJ.
a bit.
Yeah,
Whereas
Is it
if it was
just like
just
the
Arn and Tully,
JCP? Because if it's a JCP,
yeah,
Arn and Tully, they're great, but like,
JJ didn't. Yeah, because JJ didn't manage him in WWF. So it's
it's not the
it's only Jim Crockett. Or
it's not the only weird definition. I would still be a yes on them because even though Dave's finding it weird in my brain, it makes sense, right?
yeah,
Trust me, bro.
it's in the
Trust me,
same
bro.
it's in the same vein as the Von Erichs. Like the Von Erichs don't have a plethora of matches together as a trio, but as the concept of the Von Erichs, you think about it in totality. Yes, you have to put them as a yes. In same way with Arn Tully and JJ.
Yeah, so you're gonna be a yes on Arn and Tully and JJ.
I'm if I had a vote, yes, and I've probably said a lot of yeses already. I haven't
No,
tracked them.
I'm keeping track. I have 5. Doc has 5. You have 4. So
Okay.
you're a yes right now on JYD, on the Bon Erics, on Sputnik, and on Aaron Tully. And then you had a couple maybes, but like the maybes, I think like we'll come back and see like, hey, do you want to change your vote on anything before? Um, um, okay, so I'm gonna start moving this fast because we're getting into like the weeds on that. I'll ask if somebody wants to like give an opinion. Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, good tag team in Mid Atlantic.
nope.
Ricky's already in. I'm a no. I mean, there's way better tag teams that like we're going no on, and I like them, but like no, unless it's anybody like making the case for Ricky Steamboat and Youngblood.
Too short of a run. Nah, I can't. Too short
They
of a run,
do.
not
I mean,
enough time on the top.
and there's also some personal issues with Jay that we're not going to get into. So like, I'm like,
Yeah.
it's fine. I'm like, I mean, they're fine on the ballot, and we're fine having a conversation around it, but I'm like not going to vote for them.
Yeah, I
Heart
mean,
Foundation.
the final conflict tag. I want to. If you haven't watched it, the final with Slaughter and Canoodle, immediately watch it.
Yes.
If you never watched it,
It's
immediately
great.
watch it. But
Yes, yes. I also like put the Mid Atlantic them against the Briscoes. That is another great match. There's a like again from a work rate perspective, these guys are good. Again, short run, Ricky's already in. This is a worse version of the British Bulldogs case, right?
Yeah.
The Bulldogs have a better case than both these guys, or the Bulldogs have a better case than like this tag team. I think Ricky and Dynamite are both like no-brainer Hall failures. Heart Foundation. Heart Foundation, Heart and Neidhart, I am a no on. Again, for the same reason I just mentioned for Ricky Steamboat and Youngblood, and I would argue that like Steamboat and Youngblood, right, have a better drawing peak as a tag team than Brett and Jim.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because it's like I mean, like Brett breaks out to be on his own, but really, kind of, he's the star, right? Where I mean, I don't think like, and they really were more like heels. They weren't like kind of a drawing face kind of deal. Again, if we're comparing it, Bulldogs. Like if I'm comparing tag teams, I'm going like Ollie and Arn, Bulldogs, or Steamboat and Dave Youngblood, and then the Hearts, right? In terms of like
Yeah.
Hall of Fame case.
Because
No, I think
when I
like
think of
I think Bret Hart was.
oh sorry, when I think of like archetype tag teams, right? Arn and Tully are the archetype tag team. You know, we see them kind of copied throughout the years. We see them copied now as FTR. Those are two Arns together.
DYI. Here's the thing, no, but DYI like Gargano and Ciampa already kind of copied too. So like this is
Yeah,
not a thing that is unique. People have like the what is it? God, I'm forgetting their names. The Bullet Club guys. What's her name?
the Good Brothers.
The Good Brothers had a little bit of like, in terms of presentation, I'm not talking about work, I'm talking presentation. So the Good
Yeah,
Brothers had like a little bit of that. Like that element of how they presented themselves as a tag team is influential as a heel kind of tag team. The
yeah,
Midnights even kind of copied a little bit of that too, like when they were like the comedy bit. They do the comedy heel bit too a little bit,
yeah.
as like the heel showing ass. But
But
again, the Horsemen did that too.
yeah,
So
like as the Heart
again, it's really
Foundation, like
important.
as just a tag team, just Brett and Anvil. I'm I say no. They just didn't have like the drawing run on top like Demolition did, and they were just
Yeah,
kind of like they're not like the definitive tag team of the '80s of WWF, and that's why I don't really see them as that level. And then Jim kind of drags them down a little bit as far as like some of their matches are
yeah.
great, right? The 2 out of 3 falls with the Bulldogs. Oh man, that's probably one. That's
That's
why it
by the way,
hurts so much to say
that's
no to the Bulldogs because like
but again,
that's like
but
such a
again,
great match.
Dynamite, and Brett are already in, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But like so, like no, I mean I can't justify it. The
yeah.
JML,
I don't want to
different
say
opinion on the Hearts, or
So I have similar towards yours. I mean, I like the Bulldogs a lot more if we're thinking about it. And I'm maybe on the Bulldogs. So, but
yeah,
that's the thing. I've liked the Hart Foundation. Like, it's as a working team. Yes, I love to watch them on like just pull up and watch a Hart Foundation match. But as a Hall of Fame tag team, it's like it feels like I have to choose one or the other in terms of the Bulldogs,
it's kind
Hearts.
of fun. It's kind of funny. I know the Rockers fell off, and I would probably vote for the Rockets before the Hearts
I mean,
as a
the
tag team.
Rockers. The
I
Rockers
get
do
that.
have the
Yeah,
run in Memphis, and they have a run in AWA
Yes, they
also.
have a run in the
So
AWA too, and they have
I
the
was about
great
to
series
mention
of
the
matches
AWA.
with.
Yeah,
Yeah. So the Rockers are a more accomplished tag team, but like, and actually, I'd probably vote the Rocker. I might vote the Rockers before Jungblood and Steamboat, but that's like a much more interesting conversation, because I
yeah,
think technically the Rockers were like no. See, here's the thing: the Rockers are a very important tag team stylistically, right? Because they're bringing that style that the Fantastics
yeah.
and some of
They're
the other
bringing
like
the
face
lucha.
tag teams had. So they're a very rock and roll express tag team, but are more polished fashion in a way. It's not to say the
Yeah,
rock and roll weren't like great workers, but I think like the Rockers felt like a more finished act, even if they weren't as over as a drawing concern. And I'm getting into like tag teams. The Hearts, like Steamboat and Yubload were like the big drawing concern, but they don't have the longevity, and like obviously it's kind of like that. But like that babyface heat tag team is kind of really interesting. But again, none of these guys like, and like to bring it full circle, like the next tag team up, which is Gordman and Goliath, I'm a yes on, right? And I think they got 20% of the vote, but I think that they're much more important to me as kind of a thing, like in terms of historically, because of the way they drew in that territory and kind of like the influence and kind of the act. And I'm a big kind of,
yeah,
hey, the lucha acts are kind of underrepresented. So I think that they're kind of like a really like that a lot of that Hollywood kind of stuff is kind of lost, and I think they're kind of like really important. And I would rather have a conversation, keep them on the ballot than like some of these other tag teams that I'm not voting for. So that is like I'm closed. I am at 6, and I cannot vote for anyone more. So like I'm closing the book on all these other people. Sadly enough,
oh man.
I'm like my ballot would be JYD, June Byers, Devon Eriks, Sputnik Monroe, Anderson and Tully Blanchard and Black Gordon and Greg Goliath. So Black Gordon and Greg Goliath. Where you at, guys? At
With Gordon and Goliath, I mean, it's funny because when I looked into the backstory and just looking, I mean, there's not a lot of footage, so I
no,
haven't. But from what I've seen, they're really good. Dave always praises them when he talks about them because he saw them growing up watching in the California area. But um, I know it's funny because I know they feuded against each other and they drew. Um,
Yeah.
and
classic lucha. That is classic. That is classic lucha. That is classic.
and I'm
lucha.
thinking, I don't know how long were they a tag team, and feud, how long did they feud, how long were they a tag team in Mexico, because I'm thinking, even though they they toured throughout California and in Texas, how long did they stay in Mexico? Because if I don't know if it'd be sacrilege to move them into the Mexico region, would they garner more
So
support?
they worked. So they worked in a lot of places. He won the tag title, NWA's American Tag Team Champion, 31 times. Black Gordman, 8 times with Great Goliath. But I mean, he also had other things. But he basically tagged with Gordman off and on, Gordman and Goliath tagged off and on their entire careers, and they were kind of like a draw, pretty much everywhere they went. So they worked all over the place. They worked most of that, but they also worked in Puerto Rico. So like they worked, they were a kind of very influential and very kind of like successful act, right? And worked everywhere. And this was a very successful territory too. I mean, they were working like back in the day. You worked everywhere, but like
Yeah.
it's one of these like great like one of these annoying things where like a lot of this tape is lost, right? It was destroyed. It doesn't exist. But they were kind of a drawing concern, and they were kind of like like to me, trusting the word of the people who've like talked about it and trusting the history and trusting the drawing record, I think again I would want to keep them on the ballot, and just for that, like for what I've heard from people I trust, I would say yes on. This is where again I'm also kind of like on the guy. I think lucha's underrepresented, and I think they're like a very important lucha team, right?
Yeah. Because when you think about the Olympic, you think about the championship wrestling in Los Angeles. You think about the names that work there, and these two were the tag team of California. And it's just I this part is gets so hard because I'm seeing who comes up next, and I'm like, I think I have only one more left. I think I only have one more left
You
because I
have
did.
you so we have one vote in historical. Like I knew I was voting for Gordon and Goliath. What I wasn't
Yeah.
sure of is who I was going to spend like my other vote on, and I was like, no, I got to do it on it. I need Art and Tully of all these tag teams. I need Art and Tully and Gordon and
Yeah.
Goliath, right?
So I
And the next one, and by the way, I'm going to leave you guys as a maybe on both of these, or unless somebody wants to say no on Gordon and Goliath already.
I
I'm a
I
maybe,
Gotcha.
am
but leaning
I'm a
towards
maybe.
yes.
I'm a maybe
Okay,
because like as a historical
I'm gonna
person
leave
who
it.
like because I went to UCLA and
Let's
sort of watched their stuff. So yeah, we can move on.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go 0 on the rest of them for me. So like, does anybody want to make a case for Mad Dog and Butcher Patron?
Again, it's like
Um,
Dynamite and the and Bulldog. Mad Dog has the career
Drawing act,
butcher.
drawing act, but
Yeah,
I think there's just too much in front of them for me to like to even consider them. Drawing act, I mean, it's important, but no, no, no. I don't
yeah.
think they're important at the level for me to like to go ahead into that. Afa and Sika?
that's the one I'm gonna say no, but I understand the case, but I would say no.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I understand the case. I'm fine with them being on the ballot. I would not vote for them. Right? Bob Armstrong. I've actually argued strongly that Bob Armstrong is like he is the picture of the Hall of very good but not Hall of Fame. Right? He's fine, but I
Yeah.
mean he wasn't like he's not a guy who kind of like transcended. And I mean there's the family like I
He,
don't believe him to be very influential either.
Yeah.
right? He's fine. He's
He
perfectly fine.
yeah.
But
He
Bob,
he he had that that run in Smoky Mountain. That's what I know him for, and I think he Continental? Was that where he was at? I don't really
yeah,
have
but
a
he was
strong
never
case for
like.
Yeah.
Bob.
So he was never a guy who kind of like transcended his
Yeah.
territory. I've actually looked at this case. I'm like, no, he's never a guy who transcends that. Like somebody like the guy next guy, like Pampero Firpo, transcended, right? And he was a guy who like drew a lot of places. Bob was a guy who drew locally, but didn't really draw when he went national, right?
Yeah.
And even Pampero Firpo is a guy. Pampero Firpo is a guy who I would be. Firpo is who's the next guy I would consider, but I wouldn't vote for him now, right?
Big in Hawaii. Very big in
Yes.
Hawaii.
Oh, yeah, I love that big Hawaii territory. The big time wrestling is great, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Yeah. Because
So
we talked
everybody
about
else,
Afansica earlier, but like, well,
okay. So
he
Mad
came up
Dog
with
and
whoa yeah. So I just wanted to get that whoa yeah in, because that's where Macho Man got it from.
so anybody on Armstrong or Mad Dog and Butcher Sean, Afansika, Bob Armstrong, or Prepare Firpo? Anybody?
Eh.
Yeah, with Armstrong, there's what I've noticed just going through the ballots. I mean, just over the years, people that you know, there's a case for Bob Armstrong if you consider like locally, if you're a local legend, people value that a lot, and with him and the Continental, people love Bob Armstrong.
Oh,
Him and his family, like people love him, and he's fun. He's fun to watch, but
oh, how important? Yeah, I know. I don't disagree with that, but how important is that territory?
some the people that love Continental, people that follow Continental and watched a lot of Continental, they love it. They say that's their favorite wrestling. So
Yeah.
it's hard to combat that, but I definitely get that. I'm not a
Somebody
person that's been heavy into Continental like that, but the people that
look.
do, they absolutely love it and love Bob Armstrong.
I've sat down and looked at and tried. If somebody wants to make a case for Bob Armstrong to convince me, please do. I haven't seen it enough to say that, like, oh, he doesn't hit me on any of the pillars, right? I think probably significance is probably the one where he hits me the most, but he's not. It's you gotta talk to me. You gotta talk. It gets into like, is he like I start like I mentioned TNT Savio Vega before, and Savio's one that I use as kind of a benchmark. I said like, did he draw more houses than Savio Vega? And the answer is probably not. You start looking at the numbers, and like, did he have a feud at the level of like Savio having a feud with Steve Austin as he was coming up and kind of helping make Steve Austin Steve Austin? Probably not, right? And so like this is my and he again Savio's never been on the ballot. I'm like, can I make a case that like or like that he and in that by that comparison to me mentally I'm like I can't see it, right? If
Hmm.
somebody wants to make the case for him, please do because it doesn't like really exist to the level I think. Um, and I mean, I get it. He's a worthy person on the ballot. He's just never going to get my vote in this category where I'm like looking at like when I'm like looking at Steamboat and Youngblood and going like I can't vote for Steamboat and Youngblood, right? Or I'm looking at like Wild Bill Curry. If I'm looking at Wild Bill Curry and going like I can't vote for Wild Bill Curry, Bob Armstrong's not getting my vote, right? Does that make
Right,
Hmm.
sense?
right.
Like if I
Yeah.
have to like look at like at Cowboy Bob Ellis, if I have to look at Cowboy Bob Ellis, like I can't see Cowboy Bob Ellis, who I knew drew houses everywhere. Like I've seen the drawing, I've seen him drew gigantic houses at the end of his career in Puerto Rico. Like he was like no, he's a draw, and if I can't find a vote for him, I can't vote for Bob Armstrong or like the butcher Bad Dog and the Butcher Sean. Or like, I mean, if I can't find a like, honestly, like as we get down here, I was talking like, so the last three candidates, right? So I can't find a vote for Pampero Firpo. Pampero Firpo is a draw and really good. Rhodes and Murdoch, I'm like, nah. I mean, anybody want to talk Rhodes and Murdoch or just kind of like,
The only
like,
thing is,
okay,
I would say no on Rhodes and Murdoch because I think, to me, um, and anybody who followed the Observer ballot throughout the years, Murdoch was always a
yeah,
a lightning rod for discussion. Like how JYD is for a lot of people now, Dick Murdoch was for a long, long time until he
they were
fell off the ballot.
They were a really so okay. So a fair case on Rhodes and Murdoch. Rhodes and Murdoch were a really big time drawing tag team in the '70s. And as heels, as heels, and also Murdoch is a really great worker, right? And
Absolutely, absolutely.
obviously with all the flaws, I mean I can't see it. I'm not gonna vote for Dick Murdoch. I'm sorry. I mean I understand it, but I'm not gonna vote for him. And even in the tag team with Rhodes, there's just way better people in front of him. I was gonna
Yeah.
mention the guy who's last, who got 11% last year, Archie Goldie. I am a big Archie Goldie fan. As I
Bret
was doing
Hart's
the research,
favorite
I'm like, who the fuck?
wrestler.
And here's the thing: if you go look at his stuff, he was like on top in Stampede for ages. And if you think about Stampede, he was the guy they would trust to work the young guys in Stampede. And think about the young guys who came through Stampede, who like trained by working programs with Archie Goldie, right? Think about like some of the
JYD.
legends who came through doing that. And if you go watch him, he's got this great brawling style. He's a really good talker. He's just like really like the matches. If you watch matches from him from like 1975 or 76, it's the kind of stuff that you can put on TV now, right? Because it's just brawling and like there's good technical. It's really good work, right? Is he a Hall of Famer? No. Is he somebody you should definitely track down and learn about? Yes, yes, he's really good. Like Bret Hart has good taste on this. Archie Goldie's really fucking good. He's not a
Yeah.
Hall of Famer, but he's really fucking good. Um, okay, so now I'm gonna close the store. I'm gonna ask, hey, Doc, you owe me a vote, unless you say you're just gonna vote for five. You got Young Yard Dog, June Byers, the Von Erichs, Sputnik, Arn, and you had Cowboy Bob Ellis as a maybe, Gordon and Goliath as a maybe, and anybody from the bottom as maybes too. So what do you got for me?
God, God, this is so hard, man. Because I'm torn between Gorman and Goliath and Wild Bill Curry. Those are like the two acts that like I'm torn on. So I'm gonna take the
I was like, I
cowardly
was
out. I'm gonna take the cowardly out, and since like I was saying earlier, I did seek their stuff out because they're a lot of Los Angeles, LA, Hollywood wrestling is available at UCLA,
yeah.
and I'm gonna be a coward and I'm gonna say I'm gonna abstain from voting because I'm so maybe on Gordman and Goliath and Wild Bill Curry that I can't
Yeah,
like
I'm not gonna
argue
let you be
one
a
over the
coward. You gotta
other.
give me,
Okay,
you
then
gotta give
I'm
me
gonna
one. You gotta.
give you one, man. That's gonna be Gordman and Goliath.
Okay, okay. So you got you the sixth. So same deal, JML. I got you with Junkyard Dog. I got you with Von Erichs. I got you with Sputnik, and I got you with Arn Anderson and Arn and Tully. You owe me two votes, or I mean, you could just say one, right? But what do you got?
Now, in my mythical ballot, I'm going to use two more votes. I would lean towards Gorman, Goliath, and then June Byers. That's what I would go with.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good combo. I think we all agreed. Interestingly enough, I think we
That's
all
so
kind of
weird,
agreed.
man.
But I mean, reasonably. Here's the thing. I understand votes for Oli. I understand votes for the Bulldogs. I understand votes for Albert Curry. I understand votes for Cowboy Bob Ellis, right? I
Yeah.
understand votes for Steamboat and Youngblood too. All those I understand, and then maybe even Pampero Firpo. I'll be like, yeah, but I just have to kind of like look at it and go like, these are the guys I kind of like, like. It's funny that we all came to the same ballot.
And, hey guys. So like this is a labor of love. This is such a long project. So I just wanted to like put a pin in what we've done because we can do a whole lot more. And so like I usually ask these two questions of every guest that comes on here since it's your first time your JML. So one of my favorite things to do is eat dessert because that's the end of it, and I love my sweet things. So what's your favorite dessert?
Uh, Favorite dessert? That's a good question. Um, Probably a good sweet potato pie.
Oh, that's
Ooh,
great,
I
man.
like it.
That's such a good dessert. And the second question I ask every guest that comes on here is, what would you like your rainbow to say? Like if a rainbow came out the sky with a message from JML, what does it say?
Oh, the rainbow, like Jesus and Mero used to do.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You know what it is.
uh, be better at life. Be better.
Be better at life. Yo, I want to
Oh,
thank JML. I want to thank Numbers for doing this with me because this is a long project. This is a this is a this is a labor of love, and like you can find JML on X and on Blue Sky at uh, WON Hall of Fame Tracker, right?
WONHHOF tracker. Right,
Yeah,
right.
yes.
and
Great
and,
resource.
and you can also find Numbers at American Numbers on X. He's gonna put his tracker there, his spreadsheets over there, and you guys can like check that out. This has been one of the best big long projects I've ever done, and I want to thank both of you for being here with me. And this is only the first part of it, and I want to thank you guys for for listening. And once again, Arturo, you can take us out.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you the Hugo Sabinovich voice. Give me 1 second to like find my mental space. Señoras y señores, ha sido un programa arduo y largo y un viaje largo y tristemente estamos desesperadamente a cortos de tiempo. Pero si nos acompañan en la próxima, acabamos la historia y sabrán lo que finalmente votaremos.
Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time, as one Mr. Sonata would say.
I'll let you go, man. Talk to you guys later.